Hello and welcome to the Alpha Movement Podcast. Today, I, Tom Foxley, am joined by one of those guys that, well, when I started this journey, this podcasting journey, he was one of the people that I thought, yeah, he's a huge name in CrossFit. It'd be nice to have him on, but I never really believed I'd have him on the show. Now, this guy won the 2007 CrossFit Games. He is a figurehead and a man that many people look up to in the community. And he is just a very, very interesting man, to be honest. He is someone, as I've already mentioned, who I've wanted on the show for a long time. And here he is, Mr. James Fitzgerald from OPEX. So, James, it's a real pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much and welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No worries. Let's start with how you got involved in the kind of the fitness industry and where your training began.
I was an athletic kid, or I just loved sport as a kid. Growing up in Canada, I have memories of playing hockey and different sports at a young age in different seasons. And it just became, part of my day-to-day, where I just liked school, but I loved sport, and I played multiple different options of it. And there's just something about trying to be better than other people, and that physical pursuit was always, really interesting to me. And then played a bunch of different sports. I got injured when I was 18. I had a big injury on my leg, which kind of halted my career in specialization in some specific sports. And then rehab that, and through the rehab, transitioned into really, understanding fitness then as its connection to sport performance. So went that route to study exercise science, and did some research, and started coaching, and then just grew into a profession of trying to teach other people about it, and to today.
What was the injury?
It was a tib fib compound fracture that I had in soccer. I played competitive soccer and fly tackled, and
nice, the real version of football. Happy days.
Yeah.
Were you always in team sports, or is it solo sports as well?
I played both. 50-50. I always, in my soul, felt a whole lot better being self-responsible. I never really liked having to rely on other people. That is not a right or wrong. It just it wasn't something inside of me that, it just didn't sit well in my bones. So whenever I played team sports, I always hustled and worked so hard because whether it was good or not, I just couldn't trust everyone was going to work as hard or be as smart or do things as effectively. So I got lots of inspiration out of badminton and cross country running, track and field. I got lots of inspiration out of that because you're by yourself. You just got to figure shit out. And so I played both, but my heart was definitely in individual.
Okay. I imagine that had a huge transfer over to when you started CrossFit.
Yeah, for sure. Because it kind of made sense, because I followed a workout online that I would get up in the morning and compete against people worldwide, but it was just me against myself, So that's what I really enjoyed about that.
Nice. When you began, obviously you had that path from the injury, and you started in kind of the strength conditioning / fitness industry. So was that a purely rehab kind of point of view you're taking then, or was it kind of a general personal trainer kind of side?
From the injury, it was just just an awareness of the body. I just kind of I didn't immediately go, I want to be a physical therapist now. I really want to understand this pain rehabilitative, movement dysfunction or movement function model. I was just like, oh, cool. That's how muscles work. And, this is how our body works. And this is what's going to make me stronger. So I kind of just saw it as a very interesting study of the body through my own rehab, which kind of, then enlightened me to get a little deeper into the study of it in school.
Were there any foundational lessons that you learned at that point that have stayed with you throughout your training?
Yeah, the power of resistance training.
Yeah.
Can
you elaborate on that bit?
Yeah, well, just I could be biased to it. Like any scientist who studied psychology, they may say, well, the power of the brain or the power of emotion or behavior. I studied by, looking at cadavers or understanding cadavers, by testing people in a lab setting, but by seeing, myself going through rehab and understanding little things at that time of like motor control and nerves and their connections to muscles and patterns of movement, and how that patterns of movement, I was even at those times thinking, why do we move the way we do? Like what is survival of movements? What kind of things do we need to do to play sport relative to just living? So I think to answer your question, resistance, the power of contractions, how you move your body in space, that all is working against the resistance, whether it's just the air, or whether it's just, working against the ground, or whether it's lifting something and creating contractions. The power of that was the biggest learning for me.
And then when you how did you discover CrossFit?
I had a friend who was a fighter, and he was climbing the ranks in Canada for mixed martial arts at the time, which was like 2004-ish. And he went to this training camp, I believe, or had this communication with these other fighters in Canada, saying that these guys down in California were doing this kind of training. And he knew that I was really open to looking across the fitness realm and saying, what's going on out there and what's new and what's happening. And so he put me onto it, and I started playing around with the workouts around that time. And then I had a inventory of hundreds of clients at the time, so I was doing stuff on myself, and then also experimenting with models that I had already in my brain of endurance models and power models and training models, and then try to see where new CrossFit ideas were fitting into that with my clients.
Yeah. Was there anything that was particularly congruent, like something that you had already that kind of really fitted in with the CrossFit model?
Yeah, well, the way I just see, because the way I think is, work and rest scenarios dictate, everything. It can tell you who the person is, how resilient they are, what kind of training they should be doing, what kind of sport preparation training they should be doing, so I just saw CrossFit as an upgraded model. Actually, it upgraded my idea on what goes into the work. That's pretty much what it did.
Nice. Do you remember how that changed your programming straight away, or was it slowly kind of a slow process that you kind of trickled in? No, straight away. It'll sound simple. I just put mixed modal pieces together to do work. Nice. That's pretty much Greg's initial. That's really the uniqueness of CrossFit. Like mixed modal stuff has been done for 50 years. It's just that he put it in a unique way for people to think about it, and so I saw the mixed modal aspect and threw it right into quote unquote energy system training, and just kind of looked at it in that light. Do you remember your first WOD? Yep. Yeah. What was that? It was run a mile, 21 thrusters, run 800 meters, 15 thrusters, run 400 meters, 9 thrusters. Hideous. Yeah, it was horrible because I couldn't front rack because I'd done no clean snatch work predominantly every week. I had just known the movements but didn't have it in my practice, and I didn't do a lot of front squatting. My base training was like hang power clean, back squatting, strongman work, rehabilitative structural balance training, bodybuilding, and aerobic training. And so the thruster was a front squat push press, and I couldn't actually hold it there with 115 pounds. So I had to put it on the back of my neck and do back squat thrusters, and whole back of my neck was trashed. I bet. That sounds like a fairly kind of normal starting point for a CrossFit athlete. So what was the transition between there and the 2007 games? Well, not much really. I mean, I did the workouts on .com religiously. Everything that came up, unless it was injury or travel or something like that, I did whatever came up. I did it. So
not much, not a big shift really. I just kept doing it until the games, because right up till the games, I still followed whatever was coming up on .com.
Okay, nice. Were you doing anything else as well as the .com stuff?
Yeah, well, I always added some things because I saw it in a way of in my mind, it turned into not just a fitness program, but a competition. So I knew that there was other things of what I had known from models of training, but also in my experience as a coach, that you will lose specific characteristics of fitness and specific characteristics of movement and specific characteristics of skill development if you don't touch them. So I knew that, where I was like, I'd look back, even in 2004, at the end of it, I was like, man, we haven't done deadlifting in like 2 months, So in the back of my head, I was like, yeah, okay, I understand the dose response and intensity and the systemic response of intense lifting and the endocrinology and yada, yada, yada. But I also recognize that in order to learn the deadlift again, you just can't go away from that specific pattern of movement. So I always added some stuff to make sure I still had this balanced approach in the training.
Do you think that's the main thing that separated you from the rest of the pack then?
Well, I don't know if I really was separated. I think that people perceived that I was separated because I won. So I think there's lots of people who thought the way I did because it just made sense to not, about the fitness characteristics and keeping things in balance. I think that if anything, what could have created a quote unquote separation for it is I think I may have been, if not one person, because there was probably a number of them, just a person who thought about the scientific aspect of the dose response, like what is actually happening when people do that kind of work,
Do you think you had a mindset that was particularly appropriate for CrossFit?
Well, that's not for me to decide.
Yeah, well, you clearly did well. So that's
yeah.
That's great. How's the sport changed since 2007?
Oh man, unless you're someone who doesn't know the sport, then I can explain it to you. But the talent, one thing, just so many more participants. That's it. That's the, that's the biggest thing. Just so many more people participating.
Okay. Whereabouts did your knowledge come from in terms of the early days of training and the early days of coaching?
Yeah. Well, whatever was in front of me prior to the 90s. So I started in 94, like in quote unquote, like starting to do an actual client training session where I'm like, okay, I'm going to teach you about resistance and post-workout nutrition and energy system training and sports specific, training and macro cycles. So I started doing that in 94. So prior to 94, I consumed whatever was out there because I was someone who was in academia. So I had my hands on all the previous, scientific journals of resistance and aerobic training in those models. So I studied that, which I'm still a student of that, but I've studied that, in depth up to that point in time. And then around the mid 90s, if you're not aware, it was a big shift in fitness at the time, where this concept of holistic training and like 3D training and there was just these new models in terms of fitness that were starting to grow. Where rehabilitative models came into fitness and training, and then let's call it functional fitness started this process of growth because fitness was not seen as that before. It was like, oh, it's just something you do, but now people put a name on it. It's like, okay, that's kind of interesting. And then programs grew out of that. So I was in the initial, I was part of learning from all those people who were the initial growers of that, the Versteegans and Paul Checks and Juan Carlos Santana's and the Swiss groups and the West Side groups. And, I was Charles Poliquin, I could go on and on, Dave Tate, Charles Staley, the T-Nation, Muscle Media 2000, that growth of what was happening at the time. That's really, what's, over a period of time led me to where my knowledge comes from, really, was at that point.
Has there ever been anything that's kind of completely changed the way you thought about training?
Yeah, well, first thing comes to my mind is that that's happening all the time. Like I don't switch my prescription, but I get thoughts and ideas, and I see things all the time that just validate a whole bunch of things. But there's lots of experiences that are happening within fitness is what I see, not just within sport of fitness, but in all areas of fitness that I just constantly, I'm constantly learning. Yeah. So it's still changing.
Yeah, of course. Is there anything now that's kind of, you think's a kind of low-hanging fruit in terms of the area it needs to be developed at the moment?
Yeah, well, I'll be biased on that, just based upon where I sit, right, in the universe. I think that needs to be preempted to my answer. I think the coaching profession has gone to shit, fitness coaching. I think we lack identity and we lack purpose in where it sits within the fitness environment. I think it's rape and pillage right now for fitness coaching. Secondly, I don't think people have a fucking clue what they're doing when they do exercise. I think it's a lot of guesswork. It used to not be guesswork because people only did aerobic activity on a bike or they just lifted some weights. So it's like, oh, that's pretty fucking simple. But now fitness looks completely different. I think we're doing a lot of guessing. We're doing a lot of guessing because it's flashy and it's marketable. But it goes against principle for long-term results. So those are the two main things I see right now.
So how do we go about changing that?
Well, I'm a part of that. How we go about doing it is, changing the coaching profession with the power that you have and what you can do about it. And then investigating what's going on in the dose responsive exercise and then giving better prescriptions.
Nice. You've said a few times that you need to be aware of why when you're training. Where did that come from, and how do you help people find their why?
Yeah. I think it's in large part, it may not always be the case, but for me, it was a personal noticing of back to my rehab. So when I was 18 years of age and being very depressed and trying to figure out why I had to go back and do these stupid leg exercises, in my head, I was like, this is garbage. What's the purpose behind this? I got some little aha moments happening during that period of time where it's like, this shit's going to make me better at soccer. I am now stronger than what I was prior to the injury. And so there's those connections of the why right there is well, why am I doing this? Well, it's creating toughness and preparation and owning the process that connects me to being a soccer player again, or growing myself as a human physically. So that's how I figured out about the why, and when I started going down that road. And how, I think your second question was, how do you get people to figure out their why? The short answer on it is just developing, is not being a dick as a coach, and having an open space to create communication, which allows you to have a relationship built so you can at least discuss things of what people want to do based upon their values and not hold any judgment to it.
Are there any principles that all good coaches share? Yeah,
I think they listen really good. I think they have some good systems in place. Whether you like them or not, the systems are taking care of their business and their structure and their clients. So I think that's effective. And I think a coach has when I say a keen eye, it's not just a keen eye for movement, but they can read and react to different, tones of conversation. They can read and react to different emotions. They can read and react to sways in the market for business. They can they're very good at reading and reacting, so they have a keen eye.
Is there anyone who kind of epitomizes that for you?
Yeah, they were humans that were in my life that weren't really fitness coaches, but they were just good humans. Some of those people have passed, and currently, there's no physical being that's there that epitomizes that for me. But there's people that are clients of mine over my lifetime that the way that they their life is a lesson in, how to be a great coach. It's just that you got to get outside of your own shit and look at it and look at the lessons that they're doing, moms, raising 3 kids, for 6 to 8 years and trying to stay healthy and fit and feel love and acceptance. And, that seems like, oh yeah, females do that. It's like, dude, look inside that story. That's a booklet on how to live a life right there. How to be disciplined, how to know your values, how to nurture, how to, figure out what's good for you, how to balance all those things. So, I've learned so much from my clients just by watching what they've done, and that's made me a better coach over time. But otherwise, there were some mentors that helped me with that.
Nice. Is there anyone, or in the first person you think of when you think of those mentors? Who's that?
Bernie Nowakowski.
Okay. Who's he, and why is he that person?
He passed away a couple of years ago with throat cancer. He was a client of mine for 12 years. I met him in the year 2000. He was a friend of a client, and that client and him were really good friends. And Bernie's well studied in fundamental systematics, organizational theory, and higher order thinking. And kind of questions that I was asking my client, he suggested, based upon my questions in my life coaching consults and my vision of, what fitness was and how to do fitness, he just knew that Bernie and I would hit it off because we challenged the status quo really against organization of thoughts. And, so Bernie was that human that challenges you so much it pisses you off that once they're gone, you just have the, it's almost this, it's unspeakable recognition of how powerful their effect was by being challenging, by challenging you.
What kind of thoughts was he challenging?
Just, how to organize my thoughts. Like how to organize thoughts, like real simple things just based upon our conversation of what we're doing here today. Choose words appropriately. When you take a second to choose the right word, make sure that word means something. And when you say that word, what does it mean? It made me question, what that word means in tone and purpose and the definition of it and how it could be upgraded and orders of that wording. So things like that, where he would challenge me on all that. So I'd be talking bullshit, honestly, just like, this is fitness, this is the way I do it. And he'd be like, so how about you think about it this way? And I'd be like, oh God. and that challenged me because I was like, no, motherfucker, I'm right. Like, I'm the coach. So, don't tell me to change my ideas on how I'm supposed to think about those things. He was just very smart in that regard.
Is that a process that starts in your mind, or is it a process that starts with the words you say?
You mean the
organizing your thoughts and choosing the right words?
Well, that's philosophical. That's comes down to the nature, nurture, and purpose, and basic human needs. And I really don't know what.
When did the whole process of life coaching become apparent to you that it was an important part?
Yeah, so I was trained as what's called a professional fitness and lifestyle consultant in Canada. What really took you from just being educated in academia and doing a personal training course to another level where you could actually consult with people and help them with food, nutrition, and exercise was getting that certification through the Canadian Society of Exercise Physiology. And we were taught basic pieces in there of human behavior and how to consult and how to smile and what questions do you ask and blah, blah, blah. And so I just had that process and I just refined it for 15, now, going on 22 years of just consulting with people. And so really it was just a point in time where I looked back on all the successes and failures and relationships and said, what was going on in that coach client process that was really powerful? And, what really aligned relationships and got at values and really found out the why, like you had said. And it was in this process right now, like what you and I are doing. If we were to do it in person over and over, which we call lifestyle coaching, it's really just It's just communication. It's consulting and communication.
And why is that so important?
You just really get at understanding where you and I sit, right? So we pretty much, you and I just lay on the table, like what you think about fitness, what I think about fitness, what kind of things you want to do, how I'm going to help you do that. What value do you get from the relationship? What value do I get from the relationship? It just helps set that whole tone as to what's happening between yourself and I.
Is there a way an athlete can do that by himself?
Yeah, possibly. I'd say they can do it by themselves, and they just get into an area up here where they trust an order of their mind that does become a coach for them. So they just go back and forth, I think, from internal processing to like just doing, and then internal processing and doing. And I think the internal processing can be a coach for them. Yeah. I would, depending upon context, I'd argue over time that they're really not going to be able to fully express themselves if they don't let go of that.
Do you mind me asking what the moment was that you learned that for yourself, that ability to express yourself?
What was your last statement?
To express yourself, like you mentioned just then.
Oh, yeah. I think it was I can remember numerous instances, but I'll just give you an example as an example of how it happened numerous times. I remember doing Linda, which is a workout in CrossFit of 3 barbells, a 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 for time of a certain deadlift weight, a certain clean weight, a certain bench press weight. And you just had to cycle through the 3 barbells. And I remember for some reason just having this like goal of wanting to do it in a certain time, and overcoming it. And I just remember, doing that one time way back early in my career, and really like during it, overcoming a lot of, mental, like I could see limitations coming as I was doing the work, and it was all self-talk. I was so physically fit that there was nothing stopping me, so I had this aha moment numerous times, but this is one example where I was doing the work, and the only thing limiting me from like faster pace and more power in a faster time was simply my self-imposed thoughts of like, oh, maybe you should slow down a little bit because you're not gonna win anyways. I could see that coming from like minutes ahead. And anyways, I overcame those and just finished, and it was still a good score. But I just remember lying on the ground after those numerous instances, being like, that's a true representation for me of self-expression. Because I was able to like express myself physically and overcome all of those, those limitations that came up in my head,
When you heard that self-talk, were you thinking, no, that isn't true? Or did you try and flip them into a positive statement? Or like, was there any technique that you used there?
Yeah, I would at first, first, you got to become aware of it. Like you and I can talk about it, but unless you actually get in that situation, you're like, what the fuck, what do they talk about? I never get that. So there'll come levels within your fitness where that is going to come up. So I think how people deal with it is the key point. I think what I used to start doing, and I said it in kind of a coined term, I would say, oh, there's pain. Hello, friend. Which seems so simple, but it would be like, I'm not fucking afraid of you, and I know you're there, and I know it's the perception, and the levels of it is really related to how fit I am. But so I was accepting of it. There was no judgment to it. I was like, oh, here we go. Here we go again. And allow this like, okay, here's the journey, here's the fight. Let's just see how you deal with it. Let's take moment by moment, be present, be in a flow state. So that's how I played with it over time.
Do you think it's a familiarity with that state then, that physical state and that mental state?
Yeah, I think it's almost like, it's like when I work with folks, special forces, when you're out in a shooting range, you shoot some guns, it's totally fucking different when you're being shot at, for 3 days in a row straight and not knowing where people are coming from when they shoot. So, but can people get adapted to that? Yeah, they do, where it's like, where you and me would be like shit our pants But these guys are like, we're taking fire, and just move 3 feet to the left, So yeah, it is people love to talk about that, where you can just like, visualize your way into pain, be like, oh man, you're just mentally tough, so you'll be good. It's like, no, you have to actually experience that and train it appropriately. And I think that does upgrade your ability to do it over and over again effectively.
Is that something you purposefully put your athletes through, or is it something you expect them to themselves?
Yeah, if we're talking about CrossFit, I think, both people have to do that, but we could also talk about it in terms of ice hockey preparation or fighting or, running a marathon. There's all different levels of pain, and what intensity that is. But I think physiologically, you have to set up aspects of a season and trust in those principles of cycles that give people the correct amount of let's call it tolerance training, so that they understand it and learn from it, but that it doesn't pull them back from their fitness characteristics.
Okay, nice. You mentioned a second ago the idea of presence and being in the flow state. Mm-hmm. How do you go about cultivating that on a daily basis?
Yeah, cultivating it for me?
Yeah, for you.
Yeah. How do I go about doing it? I'm not really sure. I think it's almost automatic right now. Yeah, so it's different. I train others on it differently, but for me in my day-to-day, I just keep thinking, that we're all going to die one day, and that's inevitable. And I fucking love biology and nature, and I recognize that we age every minute, and I think about those things and connect it to my purpose. So it makes me make every minute enjoyable or questionable.
It's very stoic. What is the reason for the love of biology?
Yeah, well, I did a biology minor in university that may have kind of led me down that road, but I really do think it was connected to my young athletic career. Like there was something about, as bad as it is, but like injury and like seeing your bone, twisted and being like, even at a young age, like I told you, I was always connected to like, if I broke my leg like way back, I'm fucked. Or like I'm dead, So I always, even at a young age, I remember breaking my wrist at, I think it was like 10 playing hockey, my forearm, the radius fracture. And I remember thinking even at that age, like, how am I going to like work on the farm or like, shovel or, which I didn't have to do obviously because we had freaking casts and, people can take care of you and, you get a nice bed and a nice pillow and a warm home, And even at that point, I was like, how in the fuck? So I always just really appreciated the biological aspect of cells and how we're all put together and how it all works. So it just led me down, obviously, just understanding it at a deeper level as I got as an adult,
Was there anyone in your family who was particularly like that or a particular influencer at that young age?
No, I don't know. I don't know how you, besides my brother, if you met my brother, it'd be like, oh yeah, okay, there's lots of similarities between you two guys. You're in fitness, you kind of look somewhat similar. He's a little bit more pasty white than I am, but besides that, no, man, there's nothing really.
Okay. What is a perfect day in the world of James Fitzgerald?
Yeah, I would say, man, it's probably the day-to-day that I have here in Arizona, which is generally wake up time. I get up around 4:40-ish. That's what I've been waking up right now in the wintertime anyways, or the winters that we have in Arizona, which is not even really winters. But and then I, listen to some radio and I do some flow work and move around, just getting my body moving and getting into some positions and have some water. I make breakfast or make proteins really for my family because then my kids and my wife get up later than me, so it's all prepared when they get up. I bike into work. I sit down and have breakfast and listen a little bit more, do some reading. I do some consulting throughout the day. I do some design or content. I do some coaching. I exercise. I do some business stuff. And then I go home, 3 or 4, a bike home. We hang out with the kids for a little bit, prepare supper, have supper with everyone, do some after supper activities, whether they're playing sports or something like that. And then we have a wind down, 7-ish plus, where the kids 2 girls I have are getting bathed or just doing the wind down for bed and reading. And I participate with them on that. And then my wife and I spend the last hour and a half a day just watching some stupid TV show or some great documentary. And just she lies on my lap on the couch and I rub her hair until she falls asleep. And I got to poke her to get up and go to bed. And I take a crap and I wind down and rinse and repeat. That would be my day forever, I think.
Sounds like a good life. You mentioned
I'm pretty grateful.
Yeah, I bet. You mentioned their books and podcasts. What are your go-tos?
I don't have most of my fitness friends or coaches, because I just got onto Facebook like 6 months ago. They send me different ones that they think it'd be really cool to listen to. So I don't have go-tos that I go to all the time. I don't have a subscription to a certain podcast. For books, I allow the universe to I've always trusted in the universe for stuff to fall in my lap for that, whatever that means. But like for example, this morning with a consult that I had, this lady told me about this lady's research and reading on grit, GRIT, about human resilience and behavior and grit. And it's the second time that someone has told me this week about it. So that's a sign. It's like, okay, I better read that. That's generally how I operate of the books.
I think you're also the third person to mention grit on this podcast. So I think that's another sign there. Are there any books that have particularly influenced you as not only a coach, but as a man as well?
Yeah. The Way of the Superior Man.
Yeah.
I can get it for you.
I'm writing that down right now. It's again something I've heard 2 times. And why? What was the main takeaway you took from that?
Yeah, I think I think it's about hand in hand that with Heroes, Rogues, and Lovers. It's another one. Really, because you said man at the end of it, right? So for me. And this is not a reflection of anyone else for it, but again, it's a huge connection to biology of the differences, penises versus vaginas, and everything that is coinciding with that. I think the level of where David Data is for his sharing of knowledge. Some people who would read it would be really threatened. So I think it's, how there's some things that, a time of your life just is a good time to read some things. And then there's other times where you're like, what I'm talking about, right? There's some 17-year-old kids where you're like, no, it's probably not the book you want to read, that's talking about menopausal symptoms or something, right? It's like, give it a little time and then it'd be a good book for you. So that book is about timing. Because some people at the right time, it really is inspiring, and it was for me. So,
okay, you've mentioned in a few videos that I've watched physical culture.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean for you?
It's just the participation in people, like looking at this and be like what the hell does this have to do with how we live our life? So, physical culture would be exercising, fitness movements. Understanding the physical body and how it relates to longevity and health and fitness. That's what physical culture would be. So,
okay, nice. And what does it mean to be a human for you?
What does it mean to be a human for me? Well, on a basic level, it's reproduction and survival, and understanding as time goes on and humans have the opportunity, each individual opportunity to develop, understanding yourself specifically as to what's involved in that, and bias in my mind in terms of emotion and biology, but also then trying to figure out over time the collective of humans. So that's what I think in the end, for me, that's my vision of what it means to be human, is to try to understand what it's all about.
Okay. Do you have a meditation practice or anything like that?
Yeah, I think I do. The reason I say that is because I haven't been like, I didn't go to a meditation school, or I wasn't taught by a professional on it, but from what I hear and how I teach people about just awareness of breath and where they are and where their mind is, it parallels all the stuff that we teach in life coaching and what I learned about in like awareness and noticing and things like that. So I have what would be considered meditative practices that occur in the morning time when I wake up and do some movement. And then also when I just have alone times, when I travel or read or sit and relax, I do that. And then when I exercise is a meditative practice for me. There's been lots of times where I'm exercising where I'm just in this like, completely flow state, which is very meditative, so. Do
you listen to music or have any distraction when you train?
I do listen to music, or it always has been in some way, shape, or form kind of background. I do enjoy music though. I'm very eclectic in my music like choices. I love all kinds of music. It always has like something that sat well with me. But I can, I think it's more than music. I think it's about rhythm, because when I did endurance training too, and like cross country running, like you would know, or if you don't know, within endurance, like you don't have music. So you have to find rhythms to create pace, right? And your rhythms of your heart rate, breath, foot, step, rotation, like you just get into these rhythms that are like this. It's like, well, how long can I sustain this rhythm? Well, however long you want to sustain the rhythm, and so I think that always connected me to that within fitness. What was the question?
So
it wasn't disruption, right? What was the question?
So like, do you use any music? But I think I'm going to change that actually to, if you were going to hit Fran right now, what would be your song of choice?
Right now it would probably be some soft, like easy flowing music.
Okay.
Because I'd want to try to create as much of a parasympathetic state. I'm like my shit now, but early on in my career, you can go back and watch it on YouTube. It was like what was it? Excuse my language, but fuck you! Don't do what you don't. I'm not going to
Rage Against the Machine.
Rage Against the Machine. Like as loud as possible.
And would that change if you're going to hit a 1 rep max deadlift?
No, I never really involved any variations in music for 1 rep max deadlift because it's just such a beautiful maximal contraction of the highest intensity that nothing comes to mind and changes the music for that.
Nice. That's quite refreshing to hear, because like as you said early on in most people's training, it's stick Metallica on or something that's kind of heavy, fast and loud, and it's just going to take your mind off the situation. Whereas in reality, I think you want to be present and in a flow state, like you've mentioned. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Who's the first person you think of when you hear the word successful?
First person, Elon Musk.
Okay. And why is that?
I just think some of his, because there's probably a list of 40 people, but you said first person. So I think it's been on the tip of my tongue because I purchased a Tesla a month ago. We got the Model X SUV model. And I've been watching Elon, his story for quite a long period of time. I just admire a lot of the similarities that he has, not necessarily in terms of personality or human traits or anything, but just his forward thinking is inspiring. And even if it's a failure of business, it really doesn't matter. Even if Tesla falls down or he never gets a ship off the planet, I mean, I think it's just admirable in terms of his thought process on changing the game in multiple different ways.
He's a fascinating man. The recent biography that was released about him is a great read, and I'd definitely recommend that. Mm. if you were going to give advice to a 25-year-old CrossFitter, what would you tell them?
Is it male or female?
Oh, what would be the difference for you?
Yeah, so the male, I would say, don't let anyone limit you. You're going to have lots of piss and vinegar, so do it effectively. Train more quality over quantity, but you need to have quantity. I would say be smart about how often you go intense, and just do it at the right time. For a female, or I should say that was for a masculine essence. Okay. So it takes gender out of it, because you could have feminine, masculine essence and still be two different genders. So I'll say for a feminine essence at 25, I'd say do lots of training, train as much as your lifestyle can handle. Forget about health and longevity. Take that off the books. The more you concern yourself over it, the less you're going to be connected to maximal physical potential if you want to do it as a sport. And I'd say try to ensure that you keep working on understanding that no matter how you finish, you're going to be loved and accepted, so that you could at least really dig the process and your search to try to get as good as possible, and stop worrying about if people are going to love you or not. Where did the interest in that kind of the masculine energy and the feminine side come from? I think in university, just studying the sex organs, just sent me down this path of asking real simple questions like, why are we different? And it's just fascinating. It's just fascinating to me, of the difference in multiple different levels, and how over time, just the society and folks in general, especially within fitness and the delivery of it for fitness, we're just putting everyone in one basket, and it's kind of a deeper topic, but loss of appreciation for the differences. And because even when you say there's differences now it gets hairs up on people's backs, like, oh, but we're all similar. And it's like, well, I have a penis and you have a vagina, so we're not similar. So are we similar in a bunch of other ways? Yeah, quite possibly as humans, but we're different. And so I think losing sight of that and not honoring it really gets a lot of things into trouble. So that's why it fascinates me so much today. How do you honor it? Well, I can only do it for myself, really. What's in my immediate family, of those who I'm connected to. So for my wife and my two girls, I honor that process of just trying to think about, the whole continuum for the lifetime. And I honor it by studying it, so that I'm not just, guessing or just using theories or evolutional theories. There's got to be some background to it, whether it's right or wrong, but at least studying it to try to figure out. So I think I can honor it by getting as educated as possible, but also just doing what I can handle or control. Is there anything that you believe that others find perhaps controversial? Yeah, it's probably an area that, if there's a topic we don't want to go into, that's probably the one. That's a fair one. In my head, it would be certainly controversial, but it's on the topic that I was discussing of, just connecting to biology in reproduction and survival, and what we're all here for. And if you don't believe that's what we're all here for, then I would keep questioning, then why do you have a penis and why do you have a vagina? And why does our hormones drop out like the shitter after 45 or 50 years of age? And why are we capable of creating another human being? And why does the sun, come up at this certain time, and why it goes to, the further and further we walk away from that, it becomes very uncomfortable in people's current thoughts, And I could talk about this for hours, but I'm well aware that it's not on the main topic of the podcast. Honestly, that is an incredible episode, and you've covered so much ground there. I really, really appreciate it. Where can people, actually before that, if there's anything that you want to kind of say to the audience, if you had a message that you could tell the world, what would it be? Just wake up. Because I don't know who we're speaking to or who this will actually touch or who will listen to it, but just take a second and wake up, wake up, but become become as aware as possible. And awareness doesn't mean, become a psychologist or like start reading junk books. But just wake up.
Okay, nice. Well, thank you so much, man. Where can people find out a bit more about you and OPEX?
Yeah, we have OPEX is a global fitness education company, and we also offer online coaching 1-to-1 for people around the world who are serious about fitness. And our website is opexfit.com, and all of our information, blog, and all of our connections to social media would be on there.
It's an awesome website as well. I had obviously a good dig around in preparation for this, and it's good.
Great. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you so much, man.
Yeah, you're welcome. All the best.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Alpha Movement Podcast. Don't forget, you can get access to these shows before anyone else. You can watch them live, and you can even ask your questions directly to some of these awesome guests via me live, and I shall answer them before your very eyes. So if you want to support the show, head over to iTunes, leave a 5-star review, connect with us on Facebook at facebook.com/alphamovementofficial, or you can find out more at alphamovement.co. And I shall see you soon for another episode of the Alpha Movement Podcast.